Hello, it's Deborah from the attic, and welcome to this short series on how to make a junk journal. I'm going to be taking you through a range of techniques that we use to create this journal, and I'm going to show you how to create a colour palette and a texture palette and why that's helpful. I'm going to show you how to wax paper. I'm going to show you a place where you can learn how to make this little flower. This is a little crochet flower. And we're also going to use a map. I'm going to show you how you can use a map to create the signatures in your journal. I'm also going to show you how to use white gesso and the value of that, and a whole range of other ideas to bring your journals to life and make them really personal to you. We're going to start from very basics and we're going to move all the way through to the final product that you see here. So grab a cup of tea, get yourself settled down and enjoy the first part. So where do you begin when making your junk journals? I like to begin with a single source that has colours on it that I like and that I think will work well together in a book. And so my source is this little postcard. It's a vintage postcard and it's got gorgeous colours on the front. So I'm looking at beige and sand colours, blues, and this rather nice coral colour here. When I bought this, it was 2017, and I looked on the back and I saw this date of 14th of August 17, and I thought that looks a bit old-fashioned to have been sent very recently, but then I noticed the stamp, and it's a halfpenny stamp or a halfpenny stamp. So this is 1917 that this postcard was chosen and written, and it's sent from somebody on holiday in Blackpool, and they say, "We are having a ripping time at Blackpool." That's such an old-fashioned phrase, a ripping time. So this is really quite a nice place to start. The colours are beautiful and I really like the soft sentiment of this. So you know your colour source. Where do you go from there? Well, what I do, and I advocate doing this, you might think this is, you just want to get straight in there and start making. It's a good idea to do this because it helps add cohesion to your journal. You might not want cohesion, you might be very good at mixing and matching any colourway and any pattern. I'm actually not very good at that, I have to think about it. So the way that I think about it is by making myself a palette, not just of colours, but of textures as well. And that's what this is. So down the side I have some colours from my inks that I'm using a mixture of inks as well. I'm using some Versacolour and I'm using some archival. Doesn't really matter where the inks come from, what matters is the colour. So I've tried to match up some of the colours from my postcard. Then to add a little bit of interest, I've got some jewel drops. These are 2 jewel drops from Nouveau and they dry transparent, so maybe you can see those. I've got some in blue and I've got some in a sort of a coral pink. And then down the side I've got the textures that I want in my journal. One of the things I really like about junk journaling is how it feels in your hand. You want it to feel nice, and I want it to feel different from an ordinary book. I want it to have something extra about it. I want it to have bulk, and I want it to have these extra feelings of lace or of muslin or lace, and I want to add all of that in there. And these I've chosen again from my stash because I think they will tie nicely with my vintage postcard. I started doing this many years ago. I used to design projects for craft magazines, usually stamping projects, and you work 4 to 6 months ahead. So I might be sitting in a heat wave making a project that's designed for a winter edition of the magazine, and I found that getting the colours of the season that I was aiming at really helped get my mind and creativity in that winter feel, and vice versa if I was working in the depths of winter and having to try and plan something for the middle of summer or maybe late spring. And so I would surround myself with pinks and yellows and those sorts of strong, bold, warming colours. So this is a good practice to get into. It's just an easy way to make sure that your journal will have cohesion and that it will all hang together. now that I have my colour palette, I can begin to assemble some of the bits and bobs that I might want to include in my journal. Now, that's not to say all of these things will be included, but I'm trying to get a feel with my colour palette and my texture palette. I'm trying to get a feel of what things I have that I can use that will work together. So I may use all of these, I may use some of these. It's going to be a bit of a mixture, but I've got washi tape, I've got some buttons, I've got some little crochet flowers. Now I've crocheted these and I can't crochet. I did find an online tutorial which is brilliant. It takes you through it literally stitch by stitch, and I managed to make this in an hour following those instructions, and I will provide a link to that YouTube video because I think it's wonderful. And there are lots of other things that you can make, not just little flowers. I think there are little hearts on there. There's all sorts of things on there. So I have these that I've made. I also have some beads from something, I think this was a handbag or something that I chopped up, so I've kept the beads. I got some muslin lace, I got some fabric, I have some canvas style fabric which I previously stamped a little flower on, and we may do some more of that. I've got some little pins, and I have some, these are old tea cards. You remember you used to collect these, Brook Bond tea, and some butterflies and birds that have the same colours as my colour palette in them, and some lace as well, and a die cut, which is like a little doily die cut. So that's to give you an idea of how you can begin to assemble the things that you want to make your journal. Once you've decided on your colour palette and the sorts of things that you want to use in your journal, you need to decide on the size. So I have decided on the size of mine, and it's been based on this old map. I got this in a second-hand shop. It wasn't very expensive. I've already cut this down because, you know, it's one of these great big huge mats that take up half your floor. But what's wonderful about this, and what I didn't realise when I bought it, is that it has canvas on the back. I'm going to scratch it, maybe you can hear it. So that's not a plain paper backing, that is like a little cloth that's stuck on the reverse of that, and I think it's this sort of thing, it's muslin. That gave me a few ideas. One idea is that if I wanted to add a piece of paper to my journal and I wanted to reinforce it or strengthen it, I could glue some muslin on the reverse of it. So that's something that we may do. But this I've decided to use because I like this canvas bit on the back of the paper itself, and although this map doesn't fit naturally with my colour palette, I can use gesso. I can water it down and I can use gesso, and that will help soften the colours, and it will also provide tooth if I want to paint anything else on the top or emboss anything on the top of my pages. But this lends itself really beautifully to being a part of my journal, and in this journal I'm going to have 3 signatures, and this is going to be my central signature. Because of the way it folds this way, I'm going to have this as my centre fold, and then this is going to roll out like that. I can't do it this way up. Well, I could, but then I would have to have the fold here, and then this would be a really big rollout. So I'd rather have it equal, which is why that would be my centre. Because I know this is my centre, I can make myself a template. This is my template. It's just a scrappy old piece of paper that I was practicing some stamping on. And what I've done is I've measured my map. I've worked out that this will be the size of my book, and then I've put together a template. I said there are going to be 3 signatures, and what I've done, I'm not much of a one for measuring, so what I've done is I've folded this piece of paper in half, I've put a pencil line down the centre, and then I've measured a 1/4 inch this way and this way and this way and this way, so that each of these, the distance between each of these lines is a 1/4 inch, and this line is the final line that this will form the back page, and from this line this will form the front page. So my 3 signatures will go on the centre line, so my map will go on the centre, my next signature will go here, My third signature will go on this line, and then these two outer lines are to allow room for that signature to be held in place. So whenever you're working out your template, if you want 3 signatures, let me try and cover this up. If you want 3 signatures, have your 3 lines, which is where your signatures will attach, and then add onto either side of that to allow room for your book to fold. All will become clear. Promise. It will. So I like to start with a template because, again, it helps focus my mind and it stops me drifting and it stops me cutting things the wrong size and forgetting what my sizes are. So this is a really good start. We're well on the way now. This is a cut down of one of the bags that I had some vegetables delivered in recently, and because I have my template, I know that there's enough paper there to make a front cover for my journal. I'm going to grab a pencil. I'm going to mark around the outside of this. I'm going to go slightly outside of my template. I'm going to add on maybe 5 millimeters, something like that. And then I'm going to cut that piece of brown paper out. I've moved on to an MDF board that I keep when I want to do anything involving heat, like ironing or using a heat gun. And the reason I've done that is because I'm going to show you how to make waxed paper, and we're going to use the waxed paper that we make as the outside cover for our journal. I've got a piece of glassine paper. This is a really big piece, and it's large enough to allow me to sandwich my brown paper that I've cut in the centre. You can use greaseproof paper, you could use parchment paper. Just make sure you don't use anything like the freezer papers that have plasticizer in them. Let me just get something and show you what I mean. So for example, don't use freezer paper that says it's plastic coated, because you'll get plastic melted all over your iron. I have an iron heating up. This was like cheap as chips. It's like £5 or something. I've had it for many years, and I use this when I want to do anything arty or if I want to melt anything. It's my crafting iron, and I know it sounds a bit self-indulgent to have a crafting iron, but really this is just so cheap it's not true. It means that if anything happened, if I messed it up, I haven't messed up our domestic iron. So I've tried many different ways of making waxed paper, and the way I'm going to show you is the way I have found to be the easiest. I use a beeswax bar. You can get these from sometimes in a natural food shop. If they sell honey, you might be able to buy these. You can certainly buy them online, and they're pretty cheap. I buy them online usually, and I think I get something like 4 for £5. So you do get plenty of wax, and I'm going to start by closing my little glassine envelope and using my iron on, I'm on a sort of a medium temperature, to warm the brown paper up. So this isn't about ironing the paper to make it flat, this is about getting heat into my brown paper. And once I have heat on it, it makes it easier to take my beeswax block and roll it across my paper. And each time you heat this up, it will become easier. And your brown paper will absorb more of the beeswax each time you do this. I've tried doing this with beeswax pearls. You know those little discs of beeswax that you get? What a disaster. I've tried melting paper with beeswax in the oven. That was a mess. So this way is by far the simplest I've found, as well as being the least messy. It varies how many times you need to do this depending on the thickness of the paper that you're trying to wax. So sometimes you might need to do it 4 times, 5 times. I've seen me do this up to 10 times with simple copier paper. You'll know your paper has absorbed as much wax as it's going to be able to. When you start seeing little bits of damp, almost like wet patches, forming on the top of your paper, I'm going to add one more layer to this. I'm going to make sure I've gone around the edges properly. And I'll heat that. Can you see it's looking a bit more liquidy? You can see where the liquid is, or where the beeswax is liquid, because it's sitting on top of the paper rather than being absorbed. And I've got a damp tissue and I'm just going to wipe away the excess. It doesn't really matter, but I think it helps keep your paper smooth rather than have waxy lumps on it. The next thing to do then, now that you've got a beautiful piece of waxed paper, is to scrunch it up. This is a fun bit. Try not to be too violent with it. Try not to put rips in it. Doesn't matter if you do, but it just gives you something else that you need to think about and correct. So if you can scrunch it without adding tears or rips, you're probably doing better than me, because I managed to rip it every time. Add lots of little folds. They become like veins on the paper, and they add interest and they add texture, and they give it a wonderful tactile quality when you hold the journal in your hands. Now I'm going to unfurl that very gently, and I'm going to put it back into my little envelope, my glassine protective envelope, and I'm going to iron it again. And this time we'll see the veins left, because the iron won't get rid of everything, it won't squash it completely flat, and that's fine because we don't want that. We want something that has this wonderful texture. I'm going to let this dry, although it's pretty much dry already, and whatever you do, do not be tempted to put the iron straight onto this. You've preserved your iron, you've kept it free of wax. Don't make the mistakes that I've made in the past. This is just about perfect and ready to use. Now this is something called Decovil Light. It has a buff side and it has a slightly shiny side, and on the shiny side there is an adhesive. So Decovil Light is a fusible interlining. It's got a feel like leather, but it's tear resistant, it's stable, and it's resilient if you bend it, or if you punch it, or if you cut the edges. The edges stay nice and tight, they don't fray. This is something that's used to make hats, belts, bags, fabric bowls, that sort of thing, because it has this wonderful stability, and it makes a terrific basis for the cover for a junk journal. In the first series of where I showed you how to make a junk journal from start to finish, we used a cereal box, and I showed you how to use a mix of water and glycerin to soften that and make it flexible enough to work with. So in this video series I want to show you a different way to make your journal covers. The buff side is the side that I'm going to use when I put my waxed paper on as the outer cover, and on the inside I'm going to put a piece of fabric. This is a piece of scrap fabric that I got in a remnant bin, and I'm going to give this a light iron, and then I'm going to glue it in effect by ironing it onto this interfacing. I'm going to glue it onto there. So I'll go away and do that just now. I've ironed my fabric and I've lined it up with my Decovil. This has got stripes on it, which is always difficult then, because you always notice when it's slightly on the wonk. And if you have a neat freak living inside you like I do, I find that very difficult. So I've got to just try and get over it. I'll make it as straight as I can, and then I'll try not to look at it. I'm going to use my glassine paper again to protect my iron, because I'm going to be ironing this bit of adhesive in the interfacing into my fabric. And you just need a medium warm iron, and just take your time to go over each area. The advice is let your iron sit for about 6 seconds across each area that you want to glue. Now let's see. That's better. Happy with that? I'm going to put that to one side, and I'm going to give it a chance to dry. And remember, this is the inside of our journal, so that when our journal is coming together, this will be the inside. But we're going to do other stuff to this as well, so it won't remain like this. That is now glued very nicely. You will notice that this is slightly larger than my template. This is my template. The reason I've gone larger with the Decovil is that if this was my outside edge and that was it, I don't think you get quite as good a seal as if you actually cut away the excess. So when I cut around my actual template, I think I get a better seal. It doesn't matter how firm I am about ironing it on the edges, it's always a little bit better when I cut the edge off. Decovil is something that I get from Empress Mills online, empressmills.co.uk, and I'll provide that link below the video. They have a whole range of different things, and for anybody watching outside of the UK, which I know will be many of you, I will provide the name of this interfacing that I use, and hopefully it's called Decovil Light overseas as well. I'm going to cut down my piece of waxed paper so that it is the right size for my template, and there's a little bit of overhang, not very much. I should maybe have allowed a little bit more. Part of the reason for allowing the excess is because when you scrunch it up, it shrinks back a little bit. So I have to be a little bit careful to make sure I have the whole of my template covered with my waxed paper, so that's fine. I'm just going to make a pencil mark down the outside, and then I will cut off the excess, and then I know that my waxed paper is exactly the right size for my template. Now that I've cut down my waxed paper outer cover, that has become my template. I know that is the right size. So I'm going to stick it onto the Decovil, and I'm going to use Mod Podge. You could use any water-based sealer, glue, whatever you have. Mod Podge is a fairly well-known one though. And I've got a lovely fat fluffy brush to dip into the glue. I put a piece of scrap paper underneath to help me protect my work surface. I'm going to do this in thirds, so I'm not going to do the whole thing in one go. The other thing I'm going to do, before I forget to do it, is I'm going to take a piece of ribbon. This is a beautiful blue. I love this ribbon, it's so pretty. And I'm going to glue it into, make it a nice generous piece. I'm going to add it into the centre of my journal, I want a straight edge. The centre of my journal cover, I should say. So that pops in there, and then this gets a bit tricky to try and do it in such a way that you don't get glue everywhere. And then I'm going to put this onto my Decovil. I'm going to try and line this up so that it is sort of square-ish with the very strong horizontal and vertical pattern of the fabric that it's going on to. Now where my ribbon is, I had glue on one side. I need to pop a little bit of glue on the underside of this, so I'll do that before it actually tacks in place completely. There we go. Takes a bit of persuading because it's waxed paper, so it takes a little bit of persuading that it wants to stick onto anything, but it will do. When that bit is done, I'm going on to the next piece. I'm taking the glue all the way to the edges. And work the glue in, because your waxed paper has got all of these little dips and peaks and valleys and little mottled areas, so you need to work the glue into it to make sure that that will stick. I've got some glue here. I want to make sure I don't get it onto my page. That's better, that will make it a little bit easier. Ooh, some glue has escaped. I'm going to get my next piece of ribbon ready. Yep, so that would be nice. Now we do our persuading. The ribbon does show through here. You can see there's a little patch of something darker. I don't mind about that because it may get covered up. We may make a feature of it. It's just there. It's just part of the journal. I'm going to cover all of this with glue, and then I'm going to add in my ribbon, and I'm going to put more glue on my ribbon before I squish it down onto the Decovil. So that's my inside one. Try and get it about in the middle, the same as the other one. About there. Nice. I'm taking the glue right up to the edge. There we go. And if you, when you look through it, if that edge isn't quite straight, give it a little pull. And now we do a little bit more persuading the waxed paper to adhere to the Decovil underneath. That's all nicely glued down now, nice and solid. So I want to cut off the excess. Obviously I have some ribbon in the way here now, so all I need to do is pop that in the middle like that, and that should be enough to keep it out of the way of my scissors, and hopefully I won't forget it's there if it sort of flaps open like that, and I will remember not to cut it off. So let's it's an awkward size to actually make sure that you keep it out of the way. I'm going to be cutting around the outside of my brown waxed paper, because remember this is the one that's been cut down to match the template size. You could use a craft knife. You could use, as I am, some long scissors. Got to make sure I don't cut any of that ribbon. And these 3 layers are fine to cut through. It's not too difficult. I'm just taking my time because of the ribbon. So I'm going to finish cutting around all of those outside edges now. That's all cut out now, and that is how our journal cover has been formed. The ribbons are going to be used as a tie, so I think that will make it particularly pretty. I may even do it that way. No difference. Not quite as straight as I would have liked on the inside, but I'm going to do more work on this, so I'm not too worried about that. But our template sits perfectly inside our book cover. The next bit is the exciting bit, because we can begin to prep the front cover. So I hope you found that video useful, and I hope that you'll come back and join me for the next part. And until we meet again, take care.